Hello, my friends, and welcome back to A Common Touch of Fantasy. My name is Paul, and today we are doing the Uncanny Magazine 2018 Year in Review. In this video, I'm going to tell you my favorite stories from the 6 issues of Uncanny Magazine from 2018. And then at the very end, I'm going to give you my top 3 stories out of all of the issues. A story that is labeled good is usually rated between a 3 and a 4. A story that is labeled excellent is usually labeled between a 4 and a 5. Now, short stories are highly subjectable. I think they're even more so than novels. So if your favorite story from this year isn't on here, it's okay. I didn't think the story was bad. It just didn't work for me at that moment. Just a reminder, I keep track of all my stories at commontouchoffantasy.com, where you can click on the short story menu and then pick the year you want. I'm going to try to update that and make it more useful in 2019 because I like charts and graphs and things of that nature. So I hope to use more of those in the future. So without further ado, let's get right to it into issue number 20, which was the January-February issue of Uncanny Magazine. This issue was very average for me. There were only 3 stories in this that I felt were good, and that was the Elizabeth Bear story, She Still Loves the Dragon, which is about a dragon that burns a dragon slayer, but the dragon and the dragon slayer still falls in love with each other. Marissa Lingen writes Lines of Growth, Lines of Passage, which is about a wizard that is trapped in a cherry tree and the apprentice who wants to end up becoming the master by getting rid of the master. Vivian Shaw wrote Utmost Bound, which was my favorite story in this issue. And this is about Venus astronauts who are orbiting Venus, and they find that someone has already landed on Venus a long time ago and that someone was there first way before them. And it's kind of a mystery of what the object is and who it was that landed on Venus first. And that was my favorite story from that issue. Moving on to issue number 21, the March and April issue. There was one story here that I thought was excellent. It was the A.T. Greenblatt story, And Yet. This is a multiple dimensions haunted house story. So when this person was young, they went to this haunted house and then they saw like different versions of themselves, different weird things with their family and their fears. And it wasn't until later in life when they were researching multiple dimensions that they realized this house is actually a gateway into those multiple dimensions. And so they revisit the haunted house and to find out how dimensions work and also maybe to change the past. It was a great story, one of my favorites of the year. The good stories of this one were the Emma Torres story, Like a River Loves the Sky. This is about 2 roommates that are really close. One of them is a taxidermist, and they are moving out, and the taxidermist leaves a gift for the roommate. The reprint here from this issue that I liked was the Nalo Hopkinson story, Old Habits, which is about ghosts living in a mall, but they're reliving their deaths over and over again at this mall. And the conversations between the ghosts were just fantastic. Moving on to the 22nd issue, which is the May and June issue. This is where the quality of the issues picked up quite a bit. There were 3 excellent stories in this one. Catherine Duckett writes Sucks to Be You, which is basically how a succubus uses social media in our current day and age to feed. But it's interesting how the social media impacts the succubus. A. Merkerstad writes a really crazy story with If We Die Unjustified. The point of view is from a dog in this like crazy post-apocalyptic gothic world, and there is this being called the Angel Corpse, which comes down and like kills things, but also it's in a world where there's a lot of war, and this young girl is trying to figure out how to stop all the killing. Kelly Robson writes another story that I absolutely love, and it is What Gentle Women Dare. And this is about a prostitute living in the 1700s and how she is trying to survive with her daughter, and how she meets Satan, basically, and Satan asks some questions and tempts her. It was very good. It kind of compares a little bit to the temptation of Christ in the Bible, but only in a way different way. The good stories here, we have Blessings by Naomi Novik. This is about a baby who has multiple fairy godmothers, and they are basically blessing this baby with different attributes, but the attributes that they're blessing this baby is way different than what you would usually bless a typical fairy tale female baby to, grow up to be like a princess. In this one, they're blessing her to be this really strong and fighter and strong person. Not really looks the best, but is a very strong woman, and it's a good story. Marina J. Lostetter writes Discard the Sun, for it has failed us, and this is about traveling back to the original sun at our Earth and rotating around it and finding out how that sun really impacted the human race. It was a pretty good story. Moving on to number 23, the July and August issue of 2013. This is the dinosaur issue. So all of these were connected loosely by a overall theme of dinosaurs and this corporation that created the dinosaurs. There were 3 stories in here that I thought were excellent. K.M. Spraza wrote, You Can Make a Dinosaur, But You Can't Help Me, which is about 2 trans men that visit one of their estranged fathers, but also get to meet some dinosaurs. The dinosaurs helps them with kind of their gender dysphoria, and it's a great story to just learn more about trans people in general and the different types of trans individuals. Elsie, I don't know how to say the last name of them, Susan Jonathan, and A. Merkerstad writes By Claw, By Hand, By Silent Speech, which is about a deaf scientist that uses sign language to communicate with a raptor. And the raptor learns sign language, and the scientist and the raptor basically become pack. So what's cool about this story is one author writes the point of view of the scientist, and the other author writes the point of view of the raptor, which is really cool. The Brooke Bolander story is the tale of the 3 beautiful raptor sisters and the prince who is made of meat. So there are 3 raptor sisters. One of them meets a prince in the woods or the jungle, and she basically falls in love with the prince. The prince takes the raptor as his new steed because the raptor killed his prize-winning horse, and takes the raptor back to like his kingdom. But he treats the raptor really horribly, but the raptor still loves the prince for some reason. And then the raptor meets the princess, or the betrothed of the prince, and they become friends, and they both feel trapped, and so they free each other, and then all the raptor sisters come together and eat the prince at the end, which is fantastic. It's not a spoiler because it's like in the title of the story. The good story here is the R.K. Kalaw story, Bones in the Rock. This is about a dinosaur that is now in a human body and is searching for their long-lost love by going through fossils and bones to try to find the dinosaur that they loved when they were dinosaurs together. Oh. It was a really good issue. I liked it a lot. The standout issue of the year, without a doubt, is the Uncanny Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction issue from September, October. A lot of great stories in here. The nonfiction was spectacular. There are a ton of articles and essays in this issue. Highly recommend it for everyone. The excellent stories out of here was the William Alexander story, The House on the Moon, which is about a field trip of a class that is on the moon to a castle that was brought from Earth to the moon. and about the precocious 8th grader, the disabled 8th grader who explores the castle when she really shouldn't. It was great. I love that story. Rachel Swirsky writes a not really traditional science fiction story. It's more just, fiction, with Birthday Girl, which is about the aunt who was the egg donor visiting her niece for her birthday, but there is bad blood between the two sisters because the daughter ended up having a neurodiversity issue. But it's really a lot of emotion in that story. I really liked it. A. Merck Rustad writes another great story. This is called The Frequency of Compassion. This is about a girl with overly active empathy that meets an alien on the moon while she's out exploring that communicates telepathically. So you can imagine someone that has a ton of empathy meeting someone that communicates telepathically. And it's just really good. Stu West writes Abigail Dreams of Weather, which is a kind of like a throwback 80s kid movie where a group of kids, misfit kids in a hospital, want to explore their hospital and have freedom. But what's interesting about this story is how the kids see the doctors in the hospital. It's a great story. I would like a movie out of that one. The reprint from this issue by S.L. Huang, By Degrees in Dilatory of Time. It's just a really good story about vision, your actual seeing, and how you identify yourself based off of your disability. And I thought it was fantastic. There's a lot of good stories here too. This is a good issue. Highly recommend it. Good stories. Jennifer Brozek writes An Open Letter to the Family, which is about chronic pain in space with 0G. And she makes the decision to remove her legs, and she has to communicate that to her family back home on Earth. A.T. Greenblatt, one of the biggest writers of this year as far as short fiction, I feel, writes Heavy Lifting, and this is about recovering stolen robots and recovering the robot, and it ends up being a surprise why the robot was being stolen. And it's a great story about this young girl that is disabled on a wheelchair, and she is controlling like these drones and stuff. It's really cool. Catherine Duckett, which is another standout author for me this year, writes The Stars Above. This is about present-day nomads in Kazakhstan, on the steppes of Kazakhstan, and they're trying to dodge the alien invaders who have basically taken over most of the Earth. But it's really a story about a relationship between two boys. Nisi Shaw, The Things I Miss the Most, is about an imaginary friend who's extremely real to this young girl with a disorder, but then that gets fixed and the imaginary friend disappears, and it's how she deals with that, which makes it very interesting. Disconnect by Fran Wilde. This story is really hard to believe, but basically a woman's joints randomly separate from her body and go off into space. But she can then sing those joints back to her body. She's also an amazing teacher and working through her illness while others bug her to be this token representative of her illness. There's a lot going on in this story, but I highly recommend it. The last issue of the year was Uncanny issue 25, and this is the November-December issue. The excellent stories from this were the Isabella Yap story, How to Swallow the Moon. This is a Philippine fairy tale retelling of a girl destined to be married off and her attendant who is actually in love with her. Plus, there is a moon-eating dragon in this story. So yeah. Naomi Kritzer writes The Thing About Ghost, which is about a researcher who is researching ghost stories. Not if ghosts are real, but the stories that people talk about when they talk about ghosts and how they relate to each other. But this ends up leading her down her own ghost story with her deceased mother. Really good story. And the good stories from here are the T. Kingfisher, the Rose McGregor Drinking and Admiration Society, which is a fun story about a group of fae that are talking about their love for Rose McGregor and how all of them tried to take her away and have her fall in love with them, but actually they all fell in love with her. And it's just a fun story. And then for a more serious story, Monica Valentinelli writes, my name is Cybernetic Model XR389F, and I am beautiful. This is about how a robot looks and is treated like a female and ends up getting harassed like females do at the job, and how her harassment isn't being taken seriously because she is an AI, and that the person that actually harassed her was an AI as well. And it's a very strong story with correlation with the Me Too movement, and I highly recommend it. So those are all the issues of Uncanny of this year and the stories that I liked. And the top 3 stories that I liked out of all of those were How to Swallow the Moon by Isabel Yap, What Gentle Woman Dare by Kelly Robson, and The House on the Moon by William Alexander. So that was Uncanny in 2018. Pretty good. It started out kind of but towards the end it really picked up. The last 4 issues were fantastic. The first 2 were okay. Really enjoyed this year of Uncanny. Hope to read all of them when they're actually released in 2019. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day.